The way our modern society is set up, they want us to be a society of renters. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with renting. You know, if that's the life you want to live, because there's a lot of freedom that can come from renting. You don't have something that you're tied to. If you want to pick up and move, you don't have to worry about selling your house or anything like that. And in a lot of cases, if you're renting, you probably have a landlord who takes care of all your stuff. So if you're not a handyman, or you just don't want to have to deal with like cutting grass or doing repairs or paying for expensive repairs, like if the HVAC or something goes out, you can rent and you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. But from my vantage point, there's a lot of problems that come from renting. And the first and foremost, biggest problem is that when you rent, you don't really have anything to show for it. And I think that's very obvious, because when you rent, you give it back when you leave. You're paying for the accommodation, but you're not paying for the actual asset itself. Whereas when you own a house, you're getting equity in that home every single month that you pay onto it, and you're acquiring unrealized gains, because that house 99.99% of the time is going to be appreciating. It's going to be going up in value. So if you go on to sell that house 5 or 10 years later, then you're going to at least make your money back, and in most cases you're going to actually make money on that home. So let's just take me for example. All right, I built this house in 2009. I designed this house exactly the way I want it. This was meant to be my forever home, and that's what it is. And the reason I mention that is because everything in this house is unrealized gains. I will never see money from this house because I never plan to sell it. But to build this house back in 2009, I paid $109,000. Now, all said and done, there's a lot more into this house than that, because that doesn't include the furnishings and the land that this house sits on. I bought separately. So I do have quite a bit more into this house than just that. But I would say overall about $150,000, $160,000 out the door. So over the last 16 years, this home has appreciated exponentially. The market value of this house now is close to about $400,000. But again, those are unrealized gains. All right, so let's just talk in hypotheticals here. So as a little background, as some context up front, I walked away from an 18-year-long career and retired myself from the workforce using money that I'd saved along the way. But the whole reason I got out is so that I had time to build something for myself, to build other income streams, passive income, to build a business for myself, something that can sustain me for the rest of my life, so that I don't have to be reliant on a job. Because as we all know, being reliant on a job is a very bad thing, because they can fire you. They can lay you off. They can demote you. They can cut your pay. They can basically screw you over. And another really bad problem with a job and working for someone is they tell you how much you're worth. And that's what you have to live by. If you want to make more, you have to work your butt off for it. You have to get promoted. You have to move up within the company, or you have to move companies. And in some cases, you actually have to move to a different area. So even though they say job security, a job is actually not very secure, because you could lose it at any second for any reason. So I removed myself from that system, so I don't have to be relying on that. So I don't have to worry about that. All right, so let's say that hypothetically something happened. I blew through all my money within the next, 3 to 5 years. Now that would suck. That would be a terrible scenario. But let's think about this house that I have sitting behind me right here. All right, there's, let's say, $400,000 of equity in this home, because I own this home outright. I paid it off within 4 years of having it built. So in theory, I could pull out a home equity line of credit for, let's say, $20,000. That would be 1 year's living expenses for me. Now, right now, they have HELOCs where you only pay on the interest of what you use for the first 10 years. So you don't have to actually start paying back what you use for 10 years. You're only paying interest. And right now, at the time of making this video, in April of 2025, the average interest rate for a HELOC is about 8%. So if my annual living expenses is $20,000, and I pull out $20,000 in a HELOC, but I'm only using a little over $1,600 a month, I'm only paying 8% interest on $1,600, which is a very, very small amount. And let's say that I just use the $20,000 all up front. The amount I would be paying on interest a month is only going to be like $200 to $250. And for the average person, it would be pretty easy to come up with $200 to $250 a month. And that's a lot less than the $1,600 a month I would be paying on normal living expenses. So in essence, if I ran out of my money today, I could use the equity in my home to pull out HELOCs using the 10-year interest-only plan, and I could use this equity to get me through many years before the payments start to become unreasonable. And technically speaking, I could probably do that for the rest of my life and just go in debt. And then, at the end of my life, I don't have anybody to pass my debt on to, so it just gets turned over to the state. They come in, repossess my property. All my debt goes to them, and they just turn around, resell my property, and make their money back. But technically speaking, if I needed that money, it's there because it's equity. That's something that you cannot get from being a renter. And don't get me wrong, because I know the barrier to entry for owning a home is a lot higher than renting an apartment. You have to qualify, you have to have a down payment. There's a lot of factors that go into owning a home, but I would say more often than not, if you're not worried about being tied to a home and having those responsibilities that come along with home ownership, owning a home is the way to go, because at least at the end of the day, you have something to show for it. And you can use that home like a bank. If you need money, it's there. It's in the asset. It's in the house itself. You can pull that money out. And as the home appreciates, the amount you're going to be able to pull out is going to increase. And if you ever decide to sell that home, you're going to make your money back, and you're probably going to make a profit. There's a lot of other great benefits that come along with owning a home. You can rent it out. You can make the land productive and make money off that. And in general, you just have a lot more freedom. You can kind of do with your home whatever you want. In some cases, if you live in residential areas or you're in a suburb or something like that, there's going to be some restrictions that come along with that. But if you're out in the country, like in a very rural area like I am, you can pretty much do whatever the heck you want out here. And that freedom and the peace that comes along with that is worth its weight in gold. So the way our modern society is set up, they want us to be a society of renters. They want us to own nothing and be happy. And they have publicly stated that. It's very, very clear. It's all based off consumerism. Consume, 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 and never actually own anything. Never get ahead. Never get out. They don't ever want you to escape. They want to keep you trapped in the system for your entire life. And by renting, they accomplish that goal. Renting is essentially consumerism, because you're always paying on that accommodation, that place to live. There will never be a point where you own that property and you can call it your own and you can stop paying on it. Therefore, you have to continue to work, because you have to continue to make those payments. But when you own your home and you pay it off eventually, suddenly you go from having to work to make payments on that house to now only having to work to keep the lights on and to pay property taxes, which in the grand scheme of things is really not that much money. So while I'm not totally against renting, I just think that there's a lot of benefit to being able to buy a house and eventually own it. So if you want to get ahead and you want to someday escape and not always have this lingering debt hanging above your head, this payment that you're obligated to make every single month, investing in a home is a great way to do that. And the great thing about investing in a home is that there are ways that you can pay it off early, making a very modest salary. And if you want to see exactly how I did it, click on this video right here.